Chapter 3006. Zhang Daoling looked at the Flame Emperor and sighed in his heart. The southern region had been completely pacified by the Flame Emperor. The Yen King, Yen Chong, had retreated, and the remaining defeated soldiers had been detained by the Flame Emperor. They could either surrender or die. There was no third option. Clean and tidy. However, in the western region, a big event happened. It was a soul-stirring event. Even Yen Yunbei was stunned. The Lord Sentinel's powerful attack had severely injured the star-twisting vine. However, Yen Yunbei had seized the opportunity to pierce the Lord Sentinel's heart with a vicious dagger. Poisonous insects and corpse worms had invaded the Lord Sentinel's body at the same time. His body had been destroyed, and his soul had almost been eaten. The Lord Sentinel was almost at the end of his life. He was hanging on by a thread and could die at any moment. He was the sage's first disciple. With such a status, he could not die. If he could be killed, Yi Qinghan and the Flame Emperor would have done so long ago. However, Yen Yunbei had almost killed the Lord Sentinel by accident. The news spread quickly, and even the Star Profound Sage was alarmed. The Star Herder stood respectfully in the Sage Training Hall. He seemed to be stunned by the news. "What did you say? Is the news accurate?" The Lord Sentinel's body was killed by Yen Yunbei of the Kuang Manor. His soul was almost at the end of its life, and his origin was injured? The Star Profound Sage asked in a low voice. The Star Herder replied with certainty, "This matter has caused a huge uproar. It has been countless years, and this is the first time a sage's first disciple has been killed. The Kuang Manor has stirred up a huge mess this time. I'm afraid that the future plans will be changed because of this incident. The sage Fang Yu will definitely not sit by and do nothing. Once he appears, if there is no sage behind Yi Qinghan, then we will enter the battle for Supreme Yi Qinghan in advance. However, we don't know who Yi Qinghan has placed Supreme Yi on." The Star Profound Sage slowly stood up, the corners of his eyes twitching. "Based on my understanding of Yi Qinghan, once the war breaks out, Yi Qinghan will definitely lead the main forces, causing the experts of Kuang Manor to scatter and flee. Sovereign Yi could be hiding on anyone. The more unlikely it is for him to be hiding on someone, the more likely it is for him to be hiding on that person. Kuang Manor is like a rope, condensed to a terrifying degree. Even if one of them escapes, they could bring Sovereign Yi with them and even become a sage. At that time, people like Kuang Manor will definitely spare no expense in seeking revenge," said the Star Profound Sage. "Honorable Saint Master, what should I do next?" Starherder asked respectfully. A cold glint flashed in the Star Profound Sage's eyes as he waved his hand and said, "Prepare for battle. Also, pay attention to Yi Qinghan's movements at all times. Find out the whereabouts of Supreme Yi as soon as possible. As long as we find out who has Supreme Yi, we will take the initiative." At this moment, Yi Qinghan in the northern region had just received the news. After all, everything was in a mess now, especially when Lu Zong was leading experts to attack the chaotic heavenly domain. Most of Kuang Manor's experts had begun to return to help. The Sky Sentinel Lord was taken away by his subordinates, and the western region was cleared. Yen Yunbei thought for a moment and retreated. Yi Qinghan was still in the northern region. He could not help but sigh when he read the news. The Sky Sentinel Lord's physical body was destroyed, and his soul was like a lamp without oil. Sage Fang Yu might not save him. Once the Sky Sentinel Lord died, Sage Fang Yu would definitely take the opportunity to seek revenge and seize Supreme Yi. Half a month later, Yen Emperor and Yen Yunbei each led the older generation of Kuang Manor's experts into the eastern region. The others supported Monkey King Qitian and the others, while the two experts came to the northern region. The three of them gathered, and their expressions were extremely solemn. "We might be facing the sage next." Yi Qinghan took a deep breath, feeling helpless. He wanted to use Chioda and the others to gain experience. Even if he could control the remaining 60 to 70% of his strength, it would be enough. That was why they did not kill him. However, Yen Yunbei's strength was not enough to fight the Sky Sentinel Lord head-on. He would definitely take the opportunity to severely injure him, but he did not expect that he would directly destroy the Sky Sentinel Lord's physical body. Yen Yunbei smiled bitterly and said firmly, "Old Yi, if there's no other way, I'll face it myself. At least I won't give them a chance to attack Kuang Manor." "Bullshit. Nonsense. If you go alone, what will happen to the Kuang Manor? Everyone in the world is provoking Kuang Manor. As long as Kuang Manor kills someone, won't we be wiped out one by one?" Yi Qinghan said angrily. Yen Emperor shook his head and said, "We can't compromise. Some people are here specifically for Kuang Manor. They're here for Supreme Yi. So what if you take the blame? Will the sage care about your life? He only cares about his own goal. Let's put it this way. His goal is the upper echelons of Kuang Manor and the Divine Bird. Even if we take the Divine Bird, they'll still kill us all. None of the upper echelons of Kuang Manor will be able to escape," Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Yen Yunbei gripped his dagger and sighed, full of helplessness. At this moment, Supreme Yi suddenly appeared and said, "Don't be nervous. I've already comprehended the sage's power. In 10 years at most, I'll be able to possess the sage's power. When that time comes, I'll give my power to Boss. When that time comes, even the sage may not be able to defeat Boss." Yi Qinghan, Yen Emperor, and the others were shocked and stared at Supreme Yi. "Really?" Yi Qinghan and the others asked in unison. Supreme Yi grinned and said, "How can this be fake? I'm the sovereign's power. Isn't it easy for them to study me? Although I can't control the sovereign's power source, I can take a step back and control the sage's power. Although the sage's power is only a millionth of the sovereign's power, there are no sovereigns in this world. Once we become sages, we'll be able to protect ourselves. When the time comes, I'll be in charge of sneak attacks. I'll be able to severely injure 1 or 2 sages." Yi Qinghan, Yen Emperor, and Yen Yunbei were overjoyed. This was great news. "I'm not going to waste my time with you guys. I'll work hard one last time and try to stabilize my position in the Sage Realm," Supreme Yi said excitedly. No one would have thought that Supreme Yi would surpass them and be the first to reach the Sage's position. Yi Qinghan, Yen Emperor, and Yen Yunbei looked at each other with excitement in their eyes. "Don't spread this news. Everyone must keep it a secret. The Divine Bird has become our secret weapon. As long as we can severely injure or kill a sage, we'll be able to stabilize our position and slowly play with the sages," Yi Qinghan whispered. The two nodded in unison. Yi Qinghan exhaled and said in a low voice, "Let's not be passive anymore. Let's wait patiently. Also, announce to the public that every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. Spread the word that if Sage Fangyu wants to take revenge, he can come directly to Qiu Tian Domain and fight. Let's send Qiu out first. At least we can gather our forces in the Primal Chaos Heavenly Domain. If a war really breaks out, we'll be able to defend ourselves," Yen Emperor said in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan shook his head and said indifferently, "Qiu won't be a problem. We'll leave him in the northern district of the northern Xiong immortal country. After all, he's not a sage and doesn't want to start an all-out war with us. With him around, the northern district will be safer. We'll go all out against Sage Fangyu." Chapter 3007. Yi Qinghan had considered everything. Facing Qiu was much better than facing a sage. Yen Emperor thought about it and felt that Yi Qinghan's suggestion was good. Unfortunately, Yen Chong was already scared of him and fled with the sage sacred ground. Yi Qinghan placed the Assassin Legion in the north of northern Xiong immortal country. They only needed to watch Qiu. Then he, Yen Emperor, and Yen Yunbei all rushed to the chaotic heavenly domain. At this moment, Lu Zong relied on his status as the holy son of a sacred ground. Even if he couldn't break through Crazy Manor's defenses, he still wouldn't retreat. The Taigu Emperor occupied 90% of the army of 3,000. They couldn't use much of their strength in the Seeking Heaven domain. After attacking Crazy Manor for more than 10 months, they still couldn't enter the chaotic heavenly domain, let alone attack the inner regions of Crazy Manor. Gu Qingyu, Mu Zhuang, Shige, Yi Mingxi, Green Lotus Sword Saint, and all the older generation of Crazy Manor were here. However, there weren't many who needed to fight. Half a month later, Yi Qinghan arrived at the chaotic heavenly domain. The first thing he did was to disperse most of the older generation of Crazy Manor. Mu Zhuang, Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, Green Lotus Sword Saint, and other top experts of the older generation were all dismissed. Charity Saint was the first to leave. Crazy Manor only left 30-plus Taigu Emperor, Yan Emperor, and Yan Yunbei. Moreover, Yan Yunbei hid in the chaotic heavenly domain. Unless a sage came personally, no one could find him. No one knew why Yi Qinghan decided to withdraw all the experts of Crazy Manor. Those who stayed might die, but Yi Qinghan and Jian Qinxue were here. Yan Emperor and Yan Yunbei were also here. The Taigu Emperor wasn't afraid. At worst, he would fight to the death with Yi Qinghan. Open the seal of the Seeking Heaven domain. Let's go and see what Lu Zong is capable of, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Hearing this, the divine bird quickly undid the seal. The Begging Heaven domain and the Primal Chaos Heaven domain were connected, and the 3,000 experts led by Lu Zong were gasping for breath. It seemed that they had been attacking the seal with all their might recently, but they hadn't expected Yi Qinghan to take the initiative to open the seal. Yi Qinghan appeared in the Seeking Heaven region with the 7-foot crazed maniac in hand. Looking at the 3,000 experts, the Sage Holy Land had mobilized more than half of their peripheral forces. However, there were only a few direct Ancestor Realm experts. Including the peripheral forces, there were about 17 to 18 Ancestor Realm experts. There were more half-martial ancestors, and the rest were the Taigu Emperor. Lu Zong was overjoyed. He wanted to lead his army into Qiu Heaven, but when he saw Yi Qinghan take the initiative to attack, his breathing froze. Seeing Yi Qinghan's cold eyes, he couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Yi Qinghan looked at Lu Zong and shook his head in disdain. The Heaven Patroller has been killed by my Crazy Manor. Sage Fang Yu will be here soon. Lu Zong, if you don't want to be implicated, you'd better leave quickly. Otherwise, don't say I didn't warn you if you get killed, Yi Qinghan said coldly. Lu Zong was shocked. The Heaven Patroller's death was equivalent to Qiu Da's death. The sage would definitely take action. Your Highness, let's leave first. If what he said is true, Sage Fang Yu will definitely appear here within 3 months. When that time comes, we won't be able to leave even if we want to. After all, the range of the sage's involvement is too wide, a powerful middle-aged man reminded. Lu Zong was afraid of death, so he agreed without hesitation. Yi Qinghan, if you can live for 3 years, I'll definitely come back for revenge. I'll lock you up in the Crazy Manor for 10,000 eras. Don't even think about coming out. Lu Zong didn't forget to leave a ruthless sentence before leaving. Yi Qinghan snorted in disdain. He never cared about anyone below the Sage Realm. If the Sage didn't come, he, Yan Emperor, and Yan Yunbei could wipe out any Ancestor Realm limit experts. What? Yi Qinghan occupied the Qiu Tian domain. The next battle would be between the Sage Realm and the ancient immortal subworld. He couldn't let the aftermath of the battle spread to the Crazy Manor Immortal Empire. Senior Yan Emperor, Old Yan Qinxue, take the other Taiga Emperors and wait for me in the Chaos Heavenly Domain. Once Sage Fang Yu appears, immediately seal the entrances of the Qiu Tian Domain and Chaos Heavenly Domain. The Divine Bird and I will deal with Sage Fang Yu. If we can't win, I'll buy you some time. Take the Divine Bird away. Whoever can refine it, no need to hesitate. Yi Qinghan looked at the Qiu Tian Domain and said in a deep voice. Yan Emperor frowned. The Divine Bird's sage power might not be as good as the other older sages. If Yi Qinghan and the Divine Bird worked together, they would only have a 50-50 chance of winning. I'll stay. Leave the Divine Bird to me. I'll deal with Sage Fang Yu, Yan Emperor said firmly. Yi Qinghan knew that the Flaming Emperor was strong, and he also knew that the Flaming Emperor had never admitted defeat. However, no one knew the Flaming Emperor better than him when it came to understanding the Flaming Emperor and the Flaming Emperor. Senior, I appreciate your kindness. However, I've been working together with the Divine Bird for so many years. Our hearts are connected. I believe in myself more. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice, there's no time to lose. Senior, please act according to the plan. If I die, just help me take revenge. Also, help me take care of Kuang Mansion. We can't be wiped out in one fell swoop. Yen Emperor exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and retreated without saying anything else. Yen Yunbei and Jian Chenxue exchanged glances. Jian Chenxue then returned to the chaotic heavenly domain. However, Yen Yunbei disappeared from the seeking heaven domain. Yi Qinghan frowned and said in a deep voice, "Old Yen, you should leave too. Once the sage comes, this place will be destroyed." "Cut the crap. We've been brothers for so many years. I've never missed a fight. I'll accompany you in this battle." An ethereal voice was heard. Even Yi Qinghan couldn't find his exact location. Sigh, Yi Qinghan sighed softly. He stood alone in the seeking heaven domain. The astral winds in the primal universe blew, and his battle robes were cold. At this moment, in the Sage Holy Lands dojo in the Sky Survey secondary realm, Sage Fangyu looked at the corpse on the ground and took a deep breath. He clenched his fists, and the universe around him seemed to be clenched. Space distorted, and the fluctuations in the dojo were very obvious. "Did Yi Qinghan do this?" Sage Fangyu asked calmly. An ancestor knelt on the ground and said in fear, "Lord Sage, it was Yen Yunbei of the Crazy Manor. He was killed in one blow. His heart was pierced." Sage Fangyu's eyes flashed coldly. He shook his head and waved his hand. Puchi. A sword light flashed, and the ancestor kneeling on the ground had his vitality and soul extinguished. Then, a very young expert appeared. He was at the limit of the ancestor realm. He looked similar to Sage Fangyu. His aura seemed small, but the moment he appeared, the laws and logos around him collapsed toward the center. "Xian, I've spent so many years trying to nurture a second sage. Now that you've comprehended the power of the sage, you've reached 50% of Grandpa's strength. From now on, it's time for you to come out and accompany Grandpa. I want to see who the sage behind Kuang Manor is. How dare he kill my chief disciple?" Sage Fangyu was very angry. He waved his hand and took out the soul in the Lord Sentinel's sea of consciousness. The Lord Sentinel was at the end of his life, and whether he could be saved was another matter. However, the body was definitely dead. "Come with me," Sage Fangyu said in a deep voice. Fang Xian cupped his fists and said, "Yes, grandfather. You don't have to do anything in this battle. I can do it alone. I'll force the sage behind the Crazy Manor out." Chapter 3008. Fang Xian was Fang Yu's grandson. His combat power was close to 50% of a sage's. Although he was 1,000 miles away from a sage at the pinnacle, the progenitor realm was like an ant in front of him. Sage Fangyu looked at his own grandson and felt gratified. His goal was simple, which was to make the sacred ground a unique existence among the 9 sacred grounds. 2 sages in one sacred ground was definitely unique. "Xian, if they really have a sage this time, I'll leave the rest to you. I'll stop that sage," Sage Fangyu said in a deep voice. Fang Xian bowed and replied, "Yes. Grandpa, don't worry. I'll destroy the crazy house personally." Whoosh. Whoosh. Other than Zhang Daoling, this was the first time Fang Yu had appeared in Qiutian domain. Fang Xian followed closely behind. Although he looked casual, the murderous intent in his eyes was self-evident. He wanted to establish his dominance in this battle and become the strongest below the sages. Even the sages would have to look at him in a new light and avoid him. At this moment, Yi Qinghan was standing in Qiutian domain with the 7-foot crazy hammer in his hand. His blade light was extremely sharp, illuminating the distance. Yen Yunbei was hiding in Qiutian domain. No one knew where he was, but as a sage, Zhang Daoling could see him clearly. Yen Yunbei's concealment technique was indeed invincible against those below the sage level, but against a sage, it was like a child's play. Zhang Daoling watched from afar and sighed softly. He didn't warn him because it was useless. Yen Yunbei wouldn't leave, and warning him would affect his condition. It was better to let him do it himself. Zhang Daoling wasn't far from Yi Qinghan. He was hiding in the dark in Qiutian domain, waiting for an opportunity to kill him in one strike. At the very least, he wanted to inflict heavy damage. There were still 7 or 8 sages in Jade Court, but they were all decaying. 3 of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors had died in the ancient war. The rest were past their prime and no longer had any combat power. If he could kill Sage Fangyu, things would be easier for Jade Court. However, Zhang Daoling's thinking was too simple. More than one sage had entered Qiutian domain. They all wanted to seize the ruler's energy, so even if he didn't do it, the other sages would do it. But if he did, the other sages would definitely settle the internal conflict first and eliminate Zhang Daoling first. Even the star-profound sages had come. The secondary universe had a total of 9 sages. Sage Fangyu, Sage Xian, Sage Zhongmu, Sage Tianzong, Sage Guizhu, Sage Jinishue, Sage Futian, Sage Redbud, and Sage Xiaoyu. The 9 of them had entered Qiutian domain from all directions and had never gathered together. In the secondary universe, kings never met kings, and sages never met sages. They were not afraid of each other, but once they met, there would be a fight. Yan Emperor gathered all the older generation experts of the Crazy Manor, including Lu Feng and Chu Shijun Xian, the 2 newcomers. We must do our best in this battle to protect Sovereign Yi. As long as Sovereign Yi is still alive, we will have a chance to elect a ruler. At that time, even death will be an illusion and we can be resurrected. However, if Sovereign Yi is taken away, the entire Kuang Manor will not be able to escape the calamity. The sage will not give us a chance to survive. He will definitely eliminate us, Yan Emperor said in a deep voice. Senior Yan Emperor, there is no need to say more. We have never thought of leaving. I will participate in this battle. Lu Feng said. Chu Shijun Xian nodded and said, Senior, I will participate as well. I also want someone to become a sovereign and revive Lord Liang. Lin Wutian, Gu Qingyu, Shige, and the others of the Crazy Manor were even more unlikely to retreat. The first, second, third, and peripheral experts of the Crazy Manor, totaling more than 30 Ancestor Realm experts, all drew their swords and waited for battle. The first Dark Moon Crown Prince did not want to leave. If they could win, the Crazy Manor would have a chance to elect a sovereign. At that time, all the deaths would be worth it. Yan Emperor's obsession was to revive the 9-colored Brahma heart and his clansmen. Anyone could escape, but not him. He had to protect Yi Qinghan and Supreme Yi. Yan Emperor pulled out the human sovereign sword and rushed back to the Chaos Heavenly Domain. Open the entrance to the Chaos Heavenly Domain, Yan Emperor said. Father Divine Bird was shocked when he saw all the experts of Insane Manor rushing back. He shouted, You lunatics! The sage isn't someone you can fight against. Even if it's the sage's chief disciple, you might not be able to handle him. You'll die if you go. Gu Qingyu and the others looked at the Divine Bird's father coldly and snorted. Is there any other way? We have run away like cowards in the past few battles, leaving Yi to fight alone. Now that we are on the same level as him, even if we die, I will have no regrets. We climbed from the bottom of a small plane to the top of the universe. We are only half a step away from reaching the sage's position. What is there to be afraid of? Boom! Mu Zhuang's sword pierced through a meteor and said coldly, In this life, I have been here and I have fought. Life and death are fated. I will die without regrets. Open the entrance. The Flame Emperor's aura was majestic as he said firmly. The Divine Bird's father did not dare to go against Yan Emperor's will and could only open the entrance. The Chaos Heavenly Domain emitted a dim light. Yi Qinghan was still standing in the distance, waiting for Sage Fangyu. Yi Qinghan felt the aura behind him. He turned around and saw Yan Emperor, Gu Qingyu, and the others rushing over. He could not help but frown. There is no need to persuade me. If Supreme Yi is lost, there is no need for me to live. Let's bet on luck. I bet that the sage will not dare to fight, Yan Emperor said in a deep voice. Mu Zhuang, Monkey King Qitian, and the others of the older generation said firmly, Boss, there is no need to persuade him. We will not leave this battle. Jian Chenxue stepped forward and reached out to Yi Qinghan. She smiled gently and whispered, Husband, I have never fought with you. Today I will. Sigh, Yi Qinghan sighed and nodded. He did not force it. If we really fight later, I hope that you will not fight to the death. Find a chance to escape. We cannot let the Crazy Manor die, Yi Qinghan said seriously. Everyone nodded without hesitation. No one wanted the crazy manner to die. What? Boomed that the sage had yet to arrive, but his aura had already arrived. Thousands of waves rolled up. The collision of energy caused the explosion to grow larger and larger. Flames soared into the sky. Yi Qinghan gestured with his hand. Everyone step back. I will need you later. What? Yi Qinghan held his saber with both hands and stared ahead, afraid that the other party would suddenly attack. Divine Bird, be ready to attack at any time. Just keep an eye on the sage. If it is not the sage, you don't have to participate. I will do it myself. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. What? Whoosh! The crazy manners experts retreated half the distance of the secondary universe. This distance was indeed far for the progenitor, but it was only enough to block the aftermath of the sage's attack. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Sage Fang Yu appeared in his line of sight. Yi Qinghan could see him clearly. Fang Xian held a sharp sword in his hand, his eyes full of arrogance. What? Whoosh! Fang Xian appeared in front of Yi Qinghan at the speed of teleportation. You are Yi Qinghan? Fang Xian asked coldly. Yi Qinghan stared at Fang Xian and said indifferently, yes. Hand Yen Yunbei over to me, Fang Xian said coldly. Yi Qinghan sneered and asked disdainfully, who do you think you are? His sword flashed and a rainbow appeared in the primal universe. This time, he had used his peak strength, and the power of the sages permeated the air. Boom! Yi Qinghan also unleashed his strength and borrowed the power of the sages from the Divine Bird. His attack was a sure kill. The murderous intent in his eyes was very obvious. After killing Fang Xian, he could focus on dealing with Sage Fang Yu. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. This time, it seemed that there were not only 17 figures in the primal universe, but 18. This meant that Yi Qinghan had comprehended another move. Whoosh! At that moment, the 17 figures merged. However, the 18th figure did not merge. Instead, it charged at Fang Xian alone. Boom! The original body that had merged with the 17 figures caught up and attacked Fang Xian from the side. Hum! Bang! Boom! Fang Xian held the sword hilt with both hands. The powerful divine sword actually split into two. He held the sword in each hand and used different moves. One sword attacked the other doppelganger, while the one in his right hand pierced toward Yi Qinghan's original body. Boom! The primal universe collapsed. The sword shattered the order. The profound meaning of the sword and the profound meaning of the sword appeared at that moment. They were almost indestructible. The power of the sages reached the end of the universe. Yi Qinghan roared. His doppelganger and original body attacked at the same time. He had definitely comprehended more than 50% of the power of the sages. In addition to his own strength, he had more than 60% of the power of a complete sage. Open! Bang! Yi Qinghan's veins bulged. He pushed with both arms. It was as if he could move the entire primal universe. The primal universe collapsed around him. The terrifying power shattered everything. At that moment, Fang Xian seemed to have been attacked by a true sage. His organs were displaced and his arms were twisted. His defenses were penetrated by Yi Qinghan's doppelganger and original body at the same time. Whoosh! Splat! Yi Qinghan's inch strike erupted again. He pushed back Fang Xian's arms. His long legs swept out and kicked his waist. Splat! Fang Xian lost control of his body. The sword in his left hand fell from the impact. The doppelganger unleashed its strongest power and punched Fang Xian's chest. He coughed up blood. Die! Yi Qinghan flipped his wrist and pressed down hard. He chopped off Fang Xian's sword in his right hand and sent him flying again. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's original body threw the blade out. The blade formed by the force pierced through the void and slashed at Fang Xian. Bang! At that moment, Sage Fang Yu, who was countless miles away, smashed Yi Qinghan's attack with his palm. The airwaves surged and sent Yi Qinghan's original body and doppelganger flying. Yi Qinghan's original body and doppelganger merged. Chapter 30:11. Yi Qinghan dared to say anything and scold anyone, including the sages. At this moment, All the sages were shocked. Even Zhang Daoling was stunned. What did Yi Qinghan rely on to dare to do this? Yi Qinghan definitely did not know that Zhang Daoling would help him, nor did he know that the people of the Jade Court would help him. The reason he dared to do this was purely because he relied on himself. Together with the divine bird, he could unleash a power that surpassed the sages. Although it was not much, if there were no accidents, he could definitely injure or even kill the sages in one blow. Fang Yu waved his hand and wiped away the poison in Fang Xian's body. He looked around coldly. He did not care about Yi Qinghan, but he cared about the people behind Yi Qinghan. He did not believe that Yi Qinghan dared to clamor or even scold him. Whoosh! The sage's eyes saw through everything, but he could only feel the aura of the sages. He did not know where they were. I wonder which sage's disciple is Yi Qinghan? Why don't you stand out and tell me? Fang Yu said coldly. No one stood out because no one was Yi Qinghan's master, nor was Yi Qinghan's backer. At this moment, even the astral winds in the original universe stopped. No one spoke and no one dared to speak. The experts of the crazy house were restless and wanted to rush over, but they were stopped by the Yen Emperor. The Yen Emperor knew where Yi Qinghan's confidence came from. Rushing over now was equivalent to courting death. However, things would be different when Yi Qinghan unleashed his power. Don't be impatient. Mansion Lord Yi is confident in dealing with Fang Yu, the Yen Emperor said calmly. Gu Qingyu and the others were shocked. Yi Qinghan was not even a sage. How could he be compared to Sage Fang Yu? Senior Yen Emperor, you are not joking, right? Jian Chenxue stood out and asked seriously. The Flame Emperor shook his head and replied faintly, no. As long as Sage Fang Yu dares to get close to Yi Qinghan, he will definitely be severely injured today. Everyone from the crazy manor took a deep breath and waited in silence. Zhang Daoling was also frowning and secretly preparing himself. He might not be able to save the people of Guangfu today, but he had to save Yi Qinghan. As long as Yi Qinghan stepped into the sage realm, the Jade Court Holy Land would have a war god. Even if the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors in their twilight years couldn't do anything, the 3rd planet would still have the strength to protect itself. Since the crazed manor didn't move, Zhang Daoling didn't move either. He suspected that Yi Qinghan still had a trump card that he hadn't used yet. He didn't want to mess up Yi Qinghan's plan, nor did he want to mess up his own plan. Sage Fang Yu was getting impatient. He waved his hand and chaos surged in all directions, enveloping Yi Qinghan. Chapter 3013. The Star Profound Sage frowned at first, but he reacted quickly. Yi Qinghan not only accepted his kindness, but also forced the Star Profound Sage to choose a side. Moreover, he couldn't stand on the opposite side. The Star Profound Sage laughed a few times and kept a certain distance from the other sages. Little friend Yi, you're really smart. You're the smartest, most treacherous person I've ever seen in the younger generation. The Star Profound Sage said with a smile. Yi Qinghan smiled indifferently and replied, Thank you, Lord Sage, for your praise. If I'm not treacherous, how can I be a match for the sages here? Are you saying that we sages are treacherous? Young man, don't be so ruthless. Otherwise, I won't be able to help you. The Star Profound Sage said with a smile. Yi Qinghan immediately cupped his fists and said, I don't dare to say that all sages are treacherous, but some of them are. For example, Sage Fang Yu allowed his disciple to commit murder, and then his grandson to commit murder. If he couldn't beat them, he would do it himself. If I say that he's not worthy of being a sage, do you seniors have any objections? Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed as he stared at the 8 sages. No one's gaze could escape his eyes. Sage Purple Thorn, Sage Xiaoyu, Sage Turtle, Sage Chen Yixue, Sage Tianzong, Sage Futian, Sage Xian, and Sage Tsangmu. The 8 sages each had their own thoughts. They didn't dare to force Yi Qinghan too much, fearing that he would act out of desperation. So you're saying that we're all sages and I'm stronger than you. If you're willing to make peace, I naturally won't be your enemy. However, if you force me too much, such as letting your eldest disciples join forces to deal with my crazed manor, I'll choose to perish together with one or several holy lands. Yi Qinghan glanced behind him from the corner of his eyes and said resolutely, "My personality has always been one that would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. I will repay the kindness of those who have shown me kindness. I will fight to the death with those who oppose me. I can guarantee that whoever makes the first move today will be the first Holy Land to be destroyed in countless years." A threat, a very frank threat. But nothing was more effective than such a threat. The killing intent in Yi Qinghan's eyes was very clear. He glanced at the 8 sages and finally fixed his eyes on the Zhangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage. Yanchong, Qiude, Luzong, are these 3 the sons and disciples of your 2 sages? Yi Qinghan stared at the 2 and asked coldly. The Zhangmu sage clenched his fist, and sage power surged around him. His dignity had been challenged by a weakling. "So what?" the Zhangmu sage asked coldly. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly as he replied forcefully, "So what? You know best that these 3 fellows have been bringing people to besiege the Kuang Manor. Do they think the Kuang Manor is a pushover? You're wrong. Since the early days of my Crazy Manor's development until now, we've never been a pushover. They clearly know that they will face 9 sages today. Do you see any of the older generation of Crazy Manor retreating? Do you see the 30 million soldiers of my Crazy Manor immortal kingdom not preparing for war? You and I are both sages. I give you today to apologize to my Crazy Manor and compensate for our losses. Otherwise, today will be the day you and I declare war." Hiss! Yi Qinghan taking the initiative to declare war made everyone gasp. Do you have that ability? Even if you borrowed the sovereign's power to become a sage, which one of us hasn't experienced the slaughter of other sages? How can a junior like you compare to our battle strength? We didn't declare war, but an ignorant brat like you did. How laughable. You borrowed the sovereign's power to have the battle strength of a sage. You want to challenge us older sages? What a joke. The heaven-blessed sage sneered coldly. Buzz. Yi Qinghan's saber trembled as he said coldly, "Whether I have the ability or not, you 2 will see in the future. You 2 old fogies, don't bully me because I'm young. Let's see if I can flatten your 2 holy lands in 10,000 years. Then I'll kill you today." Boom. Boosh. 2 sages stepped out at the same time, wanting to join forces to kill Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's lips curled up. He looked at the other sages and asked indifferently, "Do you want to join the battle?" Boosh. The first to retreat was the female sage, Qian Yishua. She was followed by the middle-aged sage, Purple Thorn Sage. Seeing Yi Qinghan's cold gaze, Shutian and Xiao Yu, the 2 sages, didn't want to provoke him. They both retreated, leaving only the star-profound sage standing in the distance. This sage's attitude was very important. If he helped Yi Qinghan, the heaven-blessed sage and Zhangmu sage wouldn't dare to make a move. The star-profound sage's eyes flashed. He didn't like war and liked to play tricks to achieve his goals. He wanted Yi Qinghan's sovereign energy. Now that he had offended Yi Qinghan, he would have to snatch it from him in the future. Yi Qinghan isn't a sage yet, but he already has the combat power of a sage. If I snatch it from him, I'll definitely die today. Based on my understanding of Yi Qinghan, he'll definitely take revenge on me. His first target will definitely be me, so I can't offend Yi Qinghan today. The star-profound sage secretly muttered to himself, but his expression was smiling. No one could tell what he was thinking. Yi Qinghan glanced at the star-profound sage from the corner of his eyes, waiting for his response. Fellow Taoists, Manor Lord Yi is considered half a disciple of this old man. If you bully my disciple, it's the same as bullying me. However, as a sage, I won't go overboard. You must compensate Crazy Manor, or this old man will make a move today. The star-profound sage had his hands behind his back. Chapter 30:14. The other sages didn't say anything. Xing Xian stood beside Yi Qinghan, giving the Crazy Manor an advantageous position. The Zhangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage clenched their fists. Not only were they angry that Xing Xian didn't give them any face, but they were also angry that Yi Qinghan actually dared to ask for compensation. Because of your disciples and descendants, more than 10 of my Crazy Manor's higher-ups died. I want to ask the 2 sages, how much are human lives worth in your eyes? Yi Qinghan asked coldly. What kind of cultivation, what kind of price? The Tsangmu sage suppressed his anger and replied coldly. Yi Qinghan sneered and said, "In my eyes, Kuang Manor is of equal value. Their lives are worth the same as mine. I'll give you a specific number. If you agree, then fine. If you don't agree, then you can use the lives of the strongest heirs you've sent in exchange." Yi Qinghan waved his hand and pointed at the two supreme sages hiding behind them. Although they weren't as strong as Feng Xian, they were definitely among the best below the sages. Although the two experts were hiding, Yi Qinghan had a clear view of them. They simply couldn't escape his sight. "How much?" The Tsangmu sage frowned and asked. Yi Qinghan raised 3 fingers and said indifferently, "Progenitor realm energy source, 30,000 pieces." At this moment, even Xing Xian sucked in a breath of cold air. 30,000 progenitor energy sources was enough to nurture a sacred land. Yi Qinghan's taste was really too big. "I think you're determined to fight. Don't think that you can push your luck just because Taoist Xing Xian helped you. Do you know what 30,000 progenitor energy sources mean? Currently, a sacred ground might not even be able to find 100 progenitor realm energy sources in 100 years, and it would consume 70 to 80 progenitor realm energy sources in 100 years. This means that after 100 years, a sacred ground would be able to obtain less than 10 progenitor realm energy sources. Every 100 years, they would be rewarded with more to those who have made contributions, and there wouldn't be much left. 30,000 progenitor realm energy sources. Even if our 2 sacred grounds combined, we wouldn't have that much left. You're not asking for compensation, you're kidnapping Taoist Xian Xing to fight for yourself," the Tsangmu sage replied coldly. The heaven-blessed sage stared at Xian Xing and said in a deep voice, "Taoist Xian Xing, this disciple of yours is clearly using you." The star-profound sage looked at Yi Qinghan and shook his head slightly, indicating that if he wanted compensation, he should at least give a more realistic number. 30,000. Even the entire Holy Land did not have that much savings. The star-profound sage suggested with a smile, "How about this, Manor Lord Yi, for this old man's sake, 5,000 for each of us. This way both of us can bear it. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. There's no need to make things so tense. We're all sages and we still have a long way to go in the future." The 2 sages were furious and glared at Xian Xing. 5,000 progenitor realm energy sources, even if they were inferior goods, were of immeasurable value. Giving them to Kuang Manor was equivalent to pushing Kuang Manor to the level of a sacred ground. "Taoist Xian Xing, you have to think carefully," the Tsangmu sage said in a deep voice, clenching his fists. "This old man has thought very clearly. Tsangmu, don't you remember that one year, you fought with my Sage Mountain for a supreme-grade progenitor realm energy source? You killed more than 300 of my Sage Mountain's experts. If you don't cough up some blood this time, I might as well join forces with Manor Lord Yi to uproot your 2 sacred grounds." Xian Xing's aura suddenly turned cold and said directly. It turned out that the Xian Xing sage and Tsangmu had a grudge to begin with. It was just that he borrowed Yi Qinghan's power this time to take revenge. Sages weren't sages. They weren't emotionless, but they had learned to endure. There were probably only a few people who could truly be considered sages. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors? At the very least, Zhang Daoling wasn't a true sage. 5,000 was the limit that the 2 sacred grounds could afford. Xian Xing didn't want to fight, but he also wanted to make the 2 sacred grounds cough up blood. Naturally, he asked for a suitable number for Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan didn't understand the market, but when he saw the 2 sages' faces turn green, he immediately knew that this number was very appropriate. Then 5,000 each. The other sages have all retreated. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. If you don't want to, then compensate, Yi Qinghan said coldly. The Tsangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage looked at each other with murderous intent in their eyes. The sage sword in their hands pierced through the primal universe. Woo-woo-woo, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Astral winds blew in all directions as the 4 confronted each other. Their auras leaked out, and the majestic might of the sages surged. Boom. The experts of the insane mansion all drew their swords and revealed their divine weapons. Yi Qinghan's left hand shook, and directly blasted the two strongest sons of the sages out. Immediately after, the star herder progenitor walked out, but there was an extremely handsome young man beside him. He wore sacred ground clothes and looked majestic. Choose to pay 5,000, or choose to throw away these two lives. I'll give you a chance to choose, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Song Mu's Lu Su was Lu Zong's nephew. Although he was a generation younger, his talent was the one that the Song Mu sage saw the most. He had consumed far more than 5,000 pieces of progenitor energy origins in his lifetime. Heaven-blessed Yen was the youngest son of the heaven-blessed sage. He had condensed almost all of the sage's essence, and the resources he had consumed were definitely more than 5,000 progenitor energy origins. Moreover, he was the youngest son of the heaven-blessed sage. Both of them had 40% of the sage's combat strength. They were very powerful existences, and were also the most likely existences to become the second sage of the sacred ground. Yi Qinghan couldn't bear to see the people of the insane mansion die, or else he would have already started the war. However, the heaven-blessed sage was even more reluctant to let go of his son, heaven-blessed Yen, who he had obtained at an old age. Hiss! The heaven-blessed sage took a deep breath and looked at the young man beside the star herder. His fingertips trembled slightly, and he had no choice but to give in. Because if that young man joined the war, he could really kill heaven-blessed Yen and Song Mu Lu Su with the help of the experts of the insane mansion. All right, 5,000 then 5,000. The Song Mu sage and heaven-blessed sage took a deep breath at the same time and agreed to Yi Qinghan's request. The two reluctantly handed over 5,000 progenitor energy origins. Although they were of different grades, they were all of high quality. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took away 10,000 progenitor energy origins. This didn't mean that the insane mansion could give birth to 10,000 progenitor realm experts, but it might give birth to 3 to 7 experts with 30 to 40% of the sage's power, or at most 50%, like Fong Xian. At this time, the number of progenitor realm experts didn't mean how powerful a force was. The real battle of life and death was between the sage and those who had grasped 30 to 50% of the sage's power. Let's go. The heaven-blessed sage took a deep breath and said to heaven-blessed Yen. Bush. Tian Zongyan rushed through the air, but at this time, a figure blocked his path. It wasn't Yi Qinghan, nor was it the Flame Emperor. It definitely wasn't the sage, but the Tao Sky Extreme Saint. Bang! The two palms collided, and Extreme Saint Dao Tian disappeared without a trace. Before anyone could react, he had already appeared beside Song Mu Lu Su. Boom! The two brushed past each other, and Song Mu Lu Su's figure shifted and appeared in front of the Song Mu sage. A drop of blood appeared on the sword in his hand. Extreme Saint Dao Tian was injured, but at this moment, he had also left the Qiu Tian region. Even Xing Xian couldn't find his location. Song Mu and heaven-blessed sages were shocked, and immediately knew that things weren't good. They immediately said, "Check your ancestral rings." The two opened their ancestral rings at the same time, and it was almost empty. Chapter 30:15. The two sages, Tian Zongyan, Song Mu, and Lu Su's faces turned green. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven's name was not fake. He could even steal the primal chaos heavenly domain, let alone the ancestral ring. Damn you, Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven. You've angered me time and time again. Do you really think I'm not angry? Tian Zongyan's palm grabbed the air, causing the void to collapse. The boundless heaven domain began to collapse towards his palm, trying to pull Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven back. Whoosh! Boom boom boom. In an instant, the origin universe seemed to form countless paths of reincarnation. No one could escape his palm. This was a sage. The shockwaves quickly spread to where the insane manners experts were. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and covered the boundless heaven domain. The sage's technique enveloped it, forcibly blocking the boundless heaven domain from collapsing. The star-profound sage also waved his hand and saved Xing Mu and the youth beside him with a smile. He probably guessed that the item inside Tian Zongyan's ancestral ring must be very valuable. Otherwise, Tianzongyan wouldn't be so flustered. Songmu Sage was also enraged. He leaped into the air and wanted to chase after Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven. However, other than the sage's techniques that were stirring up chaos, Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven was nowhere to be seen. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven had escaped. Yi Qinghan laughed happily. It was not bad to make these sages nauseated. Ha! Yi Qinghan laughed at the sky and swept away everyone from Insane Manor. He then cupped his fists at the Star Profound Sage. Thank you, Senior. If you need anything in the future, feel free to find me at Insane Manor. You've given me 2 favors, and I'll return 4 favors in the future. Xing Xian also had a smile on his face as he said faintly, then this old man will remember it. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan took away everyone from Insane Manor, while Xing Xian took away his 2 disciples. Only the 2 sages, Tianzongyan and Songmu and Lu Su were left in Qiu Heaven. Their expressions were ashen since they couldn't find Ultimate Saint Thieving anywhere. Announce that whoever kills Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven, this old man is willing to take out 1,000 high-rank Ancestor Realm energy sources as a reward. If it's someone from the younger generation, this old man is willing to take him in as a closed-door disciple, Sage Tianzong said angrily. Tianzongyan took a deep breath, bowed and said, yes. Lu Su, you go and announce this kill order as well. My conditions are the same as Taoist Tianzong's, that Songmu Sage said gloomily. Heaven-blessed Lu Su bowed and replied, yes. 2,000 high-grade Ancestor Realm energy sources were enough to attract the sages, but to kill Thieving Heaven, they had to find him first. Yi Qinghan sealed the Seeker Heaven and Chaos Heaven and returned to Crazy Manor. Phew! Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. Everything would be fine as long as those sages could calm down. He was truly afraid that this group of people would join forces and attack the Crazed Manor Immortal Kingdom. If that happened, the Crazed Manor would be completely wiped out. Yen Emperor and the others also breathed a sigh of relief. Crazy Manor now had a sage. Although he was a fake sage, he was still the strongest among the sages. The next step is to capture Primordial Yin Yang. Announce that Crazy Manor is willing to offer 100 Ancestor Realm energy sources as a reward. Whoever captures Primordial Yin Yang and sends him back to Crazy Manor will get the 100 Ancestor Realm energy sources. Yi Qinghan stabilized the situation, and the first thing he wanted to do was to capture Primordial Yin Yang alive. Leave this to me, Yan Yunbei said without hesitation. Okay. Yi Qinghan immediately agreed and took out 10,000 Ancestor Realm energy sources. From today onwards, we will no longer nurture new Ancestor Realm experts. We want the essence, not quantity. Crazy Manor must have 2 sages and above. Otherwise, our lives will always be in the hands of others. Yi Qinghan looked at the people of Crazy Manor and said in a deep voice, I hope everyone will support me. The Ancestor Realm energy will be given to all of you, but you can't share it with others. You must refine it yourselves and break through to the Sage Realm. Even if you can't reach the Sage Realm, you must at least have 30 to 40% of the Sage's strength. Phew, no one from the Crazed Manor rejected Yi Qinghan's suggestion. At this point, only a sage could play a key role. Only when the Crazed Manor had a true sage would they be able to hire anyone from the 3 secondary realms. Who would dare to stop them? Yi Qinghan distributed the Ancestor Realm energy to Yen Emperor, Gu Qingyu, Mu Zhuang, Lin Wuken, Jian Chenxue, Lu Feng, Chu Shijunxian, and Yu Tianchen. You all cultivate first, I will go to the 3rd planet. Yi Qinghan took away more than 1,000 Ancestor Realm energy sources. It wasn't because he was selfish, but because he wanted to break through to the Sage Realm with his own strength. By then, he would be invincible with the help of the Divine Bird. With him alone, the 9 sages wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Yen Emperor frowned at Yi Qinghan and asked, Why are you going to the 3rd planet now? Invite a sage. We don't have one, we have to rely on ourselves. How long will it take for us to have our own sage? Yi Qinghan replied solemnly. Gu Qingyu hesitated and asked, Are you sure you can invite a sage from the 3rd planet? Furthermore, if you leave alone now, Wouldn't it be more dangerous if the other sages surround you? It's fine, no one can kill me if I want to escape, Yi Qinghan said with certainty. Whoosh! Showed just as Yi Qinghan was about to leave, a figure appeared outside of the heaven-suppressing palace. Everyone focused their gaze. Who else could it be but Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven? Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven's face was filled with a wretched aura and a wicked smile. It seemed like he really did steal something good. Hee, I didn't think that the ruler's energy would become a sage. What a pity! What a pity! Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven smiled wickedly. Paragon Yi left Yi Qinghan with a flaming sword in his hand and looked at Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven in an even more wretched manner. Yes, it is quite a pity. You old wretch wanted to steal from me, but unfortunately, you don't have the ability to fulfill your wish. If you really can't do it, you can give me what you stole and I will help you ascend to the ruler level. By then my boss. The divine bird said proudly. Yi Qinghan snorted coldly. I am the second. My boss is the real boss and you are the third. Paragon Yi immediately changed his words. Even if the divine bird became a ruler, it would still have to live under Yi Qinghan's shadow. This was mainly because the two had a very deep relationship, just like an elder brother and a younger brother. No matter how strong the divine bird was, it still subconsciously respected Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan then smiled. You too cultivate first. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven, if what you stole is really a sage's knowledge, why don't you share it with Kuang Manor? We can work together. If you don't want to work with me, I will have the sage's knowledge when I return. Yi Qinghan said calmly. What's in it for me? Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven grinned wickedly. Yi Qinghan raised his brow and said, the benefit is that everyone will have bad luck. You might be having a good time now, but it doesn't mean that it will be the same in the future. When you are unlucky, Kuang Manor will help you. They were very small, so small that it was impossible to guard against them. Yi Qinghan was unaware that a few poisonous insects had drilled into his body. It wasn't easy for him to use the divine bird's strength to force them out of his body. He was so frightened that his face turned pale. The poisonous creatures and strange creatures that were forced out flashed and disappeared. They didn't die and their vitality was exceptionally strong. Damn, what the hell are these? Yi Qinghan looked at the many floating meteorites but didn't dare to move. He was somewhat unwilling. Yi Qinghan frowned and whispered, they should be accompanying objects of the origin universe. Their strength is very pure from the origin universe. Then we're giving up on these refining materials just like that? The divine bird touched its nose and asked unwillingly. Yi Qinghan nodded. He had no other choice but to give up. Wait until I find Sage Zhang Daoling and ask for his opinion. Let's leave first. Yi Qinghan stared at the floating meteorites and whispered. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan increased his speed again and dodged the universe cracks. There were a few times when he almost fell into a seemingly weak black hole. Although the black hole was only the size of a wash basin and didn't cause any harm when it wasn't activated, once it was activated, it could instantly devour an ancestor. Some black holes could even devour sages. Although these places were dangerous, they wouldn't expose their location. They could even find some ancestors' energy sources, and their grades weren't low. Yi Qinghan took away dozens of ancestors' energy sources. They were all high-grade goods. He sped along the way and didn't delay his treasure hunt. After several months of traveling, Yi Qinghan and the divine bird actually found a cloud. Clouds had never been found in the Qiutian domain, but in this most primitive land of chaos, there was a pure white cloud. It floated in the primitive land of chaos and its shape was constantly changing. It seemed to want to leave that place but was entangled by something. Yi Qinghan curiously circled around and came behind the white cloud. He actually found that the white cloud was entangled by a primitive black hole. This wasn't a man-made black hole, but a naturally formed black hole. Its power was terrifying, and even sages might not be able to withstand it. However, this white cloud happened to be blocking the entrance of the black hole. The black hole couldn't devour it, but the white cloud couldn't leave either. Fuck, this is good stuff. Supreme Martial Artist Yi shouted excitedly. Yi Qinghan nodded. If he still couldn't tell that it was good stuff at this time, it would be too laughable. This white cloud has its own consciousness. It's not dead, Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Chapter 30:17. Whoosh! The white cloud surged, but it could not break free from the black hole's shackles. The black hole could not swallow it either, causing it to be blocked and unable to expand or shrink. Yi Qinghan and the divine bird were excited. Such a white cloud was definitely something extraordinary. Get it down? Sovereign Yi asked excitedly. Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows and said without hesitation, "Aren't you talking nonsense? Something that can block a primordial black hole will definitely not lose to a sage's item. Have you seen me throw something like that away?" Although the meteorite material was good, it was still an inanimate object. However, this white cloud was not. Combine. Let's take a risk and see if we can pull this white cloud out. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said firmly. Yi Qinghan was probably the most daring among the progenitors to snatch food from the black hole. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan's aura burst forth and merged with the divine bird's soul. The sage's might was vast and mighty, and it seemed to have alarmed the little white cloud. Whoosh! The little white cloud kept surging and changing shape, as if it was asking for help. If you can understand me, give me some response. Yi Qinghan slowly stepped towards the little white cloud and said seriously, "Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Buzz, buzz, buzz." The little white cloud surged even more crazily, constantly responding to Yi Qinghan. It did not know how long it had been trapped here. No one had discovered it until now. Even the sage would not come to this place. Once it was trapped here, it might be trapped here forever. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. The sage's power filled his limbs and bones. He could not see the black hole now because it was blocked by the little white cloud. If I pull the little white cloud out, the black hole will definitely be unblocked. The sudden burst of power might drag me in as well. Yi Qinghan thought to himself. He and the divine bird were slightly stronger than the sage. They should be able to break free from the black hole's shackles. Yi Qinghan pondered for a long time. He was still unwilling to give up on the little white cloud. "I'll save you later. Once the black hole holds me back, you must not give up on me." Yi Qinghan whispered. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The little white cloud continued to bend, as if it was nodding its head. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth and stretched out his hands. Veins popped out all over his body as he took root in the starting ground and grabbed the little white cloud. When he touched the little white cloud, he realized that it was not a pure white cloud. Instead, it was a material with form and substance. It was delicate and smooth. It looked thin, but it was unknown how dense its internal mass was. "Let's work together," Yi Qinghan said through gritted teeth. "Get ready to exert force." Boom! Yi Qinghan felt that the white cloud had already fused with him, and it was even more successful than the divine bird's fusion with him. It was as if they were one, and the power it provided was far more terrifying than the one provided by Supreme Being Yi. Was there anything more powerful than sovereign energy? Could it be that this white cloud was also sovereign energy? And it was even purer than the divine bird's sovereign energy? The black hole can hold on to sovereign energy? Yi Qinghan thought to himself, his eyes filled with shock. But if little white cloud was sovereign energy, then it could be explained. Otherwise, why would the black hole keep pestering it? Are you sovereign energy? Yi Qinghan asked in a low voice. Little white cloud didn't react, but the power it transmitted was very obvious. Yi Qinghan saw that little white cloud didn't react, so he didn't think too much about it. He lifted his feet and rushed into the distance, but using 80% of his power was much faster than he expected. Whoosh! In an instant, he crossed the distance of a secondary universe. This was even more terrifying and exaggerated than the ultimate space profound. Even Yi Qinghan was stunned. Supreme Being Yi chased over as well. With a flash of his figure, he appeared right beside Yi Qinghan. He looked at Yi Qinghan in astonishment and asked in bewilderment, "Are you trying to ascend to the heavens? You're at your peak speed. I want to see what the speed of a sage is like," Yi Qinghan said solemnly. Whoosh! Whoosh! Supreme Yi's figure flashed, and the might of a sage was vast and mighty. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Yi Qinghan, with the support of Little White Cloud, was left far behind by Supreme Yi. He couldn't catch up at all. Although the divine bird's combat power was very weak, it was still a divine bird. He was best at speed. He had the true speed of a sage, and he was faster than the average sage. So in the blink of an eye, Yi Qinghan lost sight of Supreme Yi's shadow. Yi Qinghan touched his nose. He had no choice but to stop and look around. Supreme Yi suddenly returned to Yi Qinghan's side with a wretched smile on his face. Hee, I've been suppressed by you for countless years, and now I've finally suppressed you. This feeling is really fucking awesome, Supreme Yi said proudly. Yi Qinghan smiled awkwardly. The two of them were of the same age and had been together since childhood. Supreme Yi's realm had always been able to keep up, but his strength had not improved. Now he had finally improved. He suppressed him with the body of a sage, and his speed far surpassed him. All right, you win, Yi Qinghan shrugged and replied. Supreme Yi's eyes flashed as he said flatteringly, why don't we exchange positions? I'm the boss now, and you're the second? Yi Qinghan touched the corner of his mouth, stared at Supreme Yi, and sneered. Are you sure? Supreme Yi immediately shook his head and said, I'm not sure. Isn't this a discussion with you, boss? TC? Yi Qinghan sneered and reached out to slap the back of Supreme Yi's head. He said in a muffled voice, don't be so cocky. Wait until you become a ruler, then you can be arrogant with me. At that time, I'll admit that you're the boss. It's a deal. Let's go. Supreme Yi immediately stepped into the distance valiantly and spiritedly. Boom. Whoosh. Yi Qinghan and Supreme Yi joined forces and stepped into the distance. Along the way, they found some progenitor realm energy sources, and their quality was not bad. There were at least a few hundred of them. These places were the original chaotic lands that no one had stepped into. There were more primordial cracks and black holes. Even if the two of them joined forces and had the support of Little White Cloud, they did not dare to recklessly challenge the power of the primordial black holes. The two of them rushed all the way and came to the entrance of the chaotic heavens. The other paths were cut off, so they could only enter the secondary universe. Then, they passed through the secondary universe and entered another secondary universe to enter the heaven-seeking domain. From there, they entered the secondary saint realm. They quietly entered the chaotic heavens of the secondary universe. Yi Qinghan did not want to cause trouble, but the chaotic heavens still sensed Yi Qinghan's aura. The chaotic heavens had long been controlled by the sages, so Yi Qinghan was exposed when he left the chaotic heavens and entered the secondary universe. This place belonged to the Purple Sun subrealm, and this secondary universe belonged to the territory of Saintess Qian Yixue. Qian Yixue received the news not long after returning to the Qian Yi Sacred Mountain. Yi Qinghan broke into my Qian Yi Sacred Mountain? Qian Yixue muttered to herself in shock and became incomparably cautious. Yi Qinghan was not alone, and his spiritual pet had already stepped into the sage realm. If the two of them joined forces, they would definitely be stronger than her. Chapter 30:19. In the Qianyi Sacred Mountain, Qian Yixue took a deep breath. She did not know what Yi Qinghan wanted to do, but she could not allow him to enter her territory, even if it was just to pass through. If he did, he would offend the other 8 sages. If he did not pass through and had other plans, then it would be even more unacceptable. Seal all the important paths and the void. Stop him for me. Qian Yixue said firmly. Whoosh! All the experts of the sacred land were mobilized, rushing through the air and sealing off the sky and the important paths in the Qianyi secondary universe. Qian Yixue personally went out, a long white whip like a dragon's bone. There were sharp swords around the bone whip, which could be separated and used separately. It could instantly kill countless armies, and no one below the sage level could stop her. The experts and army of the Qianyi Sacred Land had sealed off the sky and the path in advance. The immemorial war spear exuded a fierce murderous intent, and a huge crossbow was aimed forward. This crossbow was designed to stop progenitors, and its lethality was extremely terrifying. It could instantly create an artificial black hole. Qian Yixue used the chaotic heavenly domain to directly search for Yi Qinghan's location and was getting closer and closer. Right now, Yi Qinghan and Sovereign Ye's speed wasn't fast and they were separated. Qian Yixue's eyes flashed. This might be the best time to assassinate Yi Qinghan. The white bone whip in her hand shrank into a bone sword, and she moved close to him, taking the initiative to meet him. If I kill Yi Qinghan, that sovereign's energy origin will lose its backbone. If I can get it, my strength may be able to reach beyond the sage level and become a true great sage. There will be no opponent below the sovereign level. Even if the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the 3rd planet recover to their peak, they will still have to avoid me. Qian Yixue's killing intent was aroused. Yi Qinghan's original body was not a sage, and it would be easy to succeed. However, if the sages took action, most of this secondary universe would likely be destroyed. We can't give him a chance to fight back. Otherwise, there will be a lot of casualties. Qian Yixue had considered everything thoroughly and pressed forward step by step. The distance between her and Yi Qinghan was about the distance between 2 main cities. She knew that if Yi Qinghan continued to advance, he would enter the largest desert in the secondary universe. It was desolate and uninhabited, so it was the best place to attack. Even if Yi Qinghan and Supreme Yi fought back, only the 2 main cities nearby would be destroyed. At this moment, Yi Qinghan did not want to cause any trouble, so he kept a low profile along the way. He only wanted to use another secondary universe to enter the secondary saint realm of the 3rd planet. Therefore, he did not release his divine sense, so he did not discover Qian Yixue and the army ahead. I wonder which sage controls this secondary universe, Yi Qinghan said as he walked. Supreme Yi stretched and said lazily, I don't care who controls it. If he dares to offend me, I'll definitely show him my strength. It's best not to offend him for now. I'm not a sage after all. Right now, our combat power can only kill 1 sage. If we kill 1 sage, there's no guarantee that the other sages won't join forces to annihilate Kuang Fu. By then, it'll be too late for regrets, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Supreme Yi pursed his lips. It was not easy for him to become a true supreme. Until now, he had not had the time to display his advantages. However, he was also afraid of being ganged up on. By then, he would probably be tortured to death by the other sages. Whoosh! The 2 sped up and directly entered the desert. Now, they were rushing in the general direction. As long as they passed through 3 secondary universes and entered the Chu Tian domain, they would be able to approach the 3rd planet. The 2 were neither too fast nor too slow. Now that they were entering another secondary universe, they had to maintain their peak condition for fear of being ambushed. As they gradually went deeper, Yi Qinghan felt a sense of trepidation because Qian Yixue was targeting him, not Supreme Yi. Humda boom. At this moment, the bone sword flew through the air and headed straight for Yi Qinghan's head. Just as the bone sword appeared in front of Yi Qinghan, it turned into a long whip. Dozens of sword blades appeared on both sides of the whip and attacked Yi Qinghan fiercely. Whoosh! Boom. The sage's power shattered the spot where Yi Qinghan stood. The entire desert was shaken by this attack, and even the secondary world was shaking. A huge collapsed black hole swallowed the entire desert. However, Supreme Yi and Yi Qinghan were gone. Qian Yixue put away the bone whip and shook her hand. The bone whip turned into a bone sword. She stood in the air above the desert and frowned as she looked at her masterpiece. She was a little doubtful. Even if her attack was very powerful, it was not enough to shatter Supreme Yi, who had the power of a ruler. Dong, dong, dong. Qian Yixue's beautiful and plump body trembled slightly. Her heartbeat quickened, and she immediately dodged and left. Following that, she split the void with her blade and headed straight for the other secondary universes. In the blink of an eye, she was a distance away from a main city. Yi Qinghan held a heavy sword in his hand. The bracelet on his wrist emitted a holy white light that enhanced his strength. At this moment, he had already fused with Supreme Yi. However, this time, it was not Supreme Yi who was in charge, but himself. Sage Qian Yixue, it turns out that Song Mu and Heaven Blessed Sage are not the only ones who know how to sneak attack. There's also a beauty like you. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and stood on top of a main city. He looked at Qian Yixue in the distance. She could not be considered old or young. At most, she was a middle-aged woman. She was still charming and was a full young woman. Her body was plump, and she was indeed more attractive than a beauty. However, Yi Qinghan did not dare to have any thoughts. This kind of woman was like a thorny rose that could pierce the hand that plucked it at any time. No matter how powerful one was, they would not be able to escape. So fast. Qian Yixue was shocked and looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. Previously, Yi Qinghan had not fused with Supreme Ye's soul. How could he have dodged her sure-kill sword? Yi Qinghan sneered and snorted. If I'm not fast enough, I'll die by your sword. Boss, this woman is so vicious. Why don't we let her stand in her holy land today and let the world admire her? Supreme Yi did not take the initiative. His soul wandered out at any time and said to Yi Qinghan in a wretched manner. Yi Qinghan touched his nose with a cold expression. He did not expect Qian Yixue to sneak an attack on him. The king does not see the king, and the sage does not see the sage. You broke into my Qianyi holy land for no reason. This is equivalent to declaring war. Why can't I attack? Qian Yixue was not angry. Instead, she asked firmly. Yi Qinghan looked at Supreme Yi in surprise and asked curiously, "Is there such a rule?" Supreme Yi shrugged and replied speechlessly, "How would I know if you ask me? No one told me." Yi Qinghan pursed his lips and spread his hands. He replied, "Sage Qian Yixue, as you can see, we didn't know about this rule. We just wanted to borrow a path and leave. Who knew that you would be so ruthless and attack us? Borrow a path? No, you must return immediately. Otherwise, you will declare war on my holy land for no reason." Qian Yixue rejected Yi Qinghan's request without hesitation. Yi Qinghan and Supreme Yi cursed at the same time. This woman was simply asking for a beating. Chapter 30-20. The word, fuck, was enough to express the dissatisfaction in their hearts. "Little girl, do you think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my might? I'll go wherever I want. I'm giving you face by letting you pass. It's best that you do so today. If you don't blame me for stepping over your head," Yi Qinghan said coldly. His life had been messed up by the 9 sages, and everyone in insane manner was in danger. Yi Qinghan couldn't help but feel angry. Boom! Yi Qinghan and Sovereign Yi merged again. Their auras soared to the sky as they held a flaming sage sword and looked coldly at Qian Yixue in the distance. Qian Yixue had wanted to assassinate Yi Qinghan, or at least stop Yi Qinghan from passing through. However, it seemed that if she dared to stop Yi Qinghan today, the entire sacred land would be razed to the ground by Yi Qinghan. You said that the other sacred lands bullied insane manner without any evidence or reason. What's the difference between what you're doing now? Qian Yixue rebuked angrily. Yi Qinghan snorted. When Lu Zong brought people into insane manner, I didn't stop them, nor did I attack them. If they hadn't committed a crime and tried to kill the higher-ups of insane manner, would they have been captured? Now, I'm just passing through in a low-key manner, yet you don't allow it. If you don't allow it, then you don't allow it. Why do you have to assassinate me? Now, you're telling me that I'm attacking the Qianyi sacred land rudely. Isn't that laughable? This is my territory. I have the right to do so. Just like insane manner, if I were to enter your territory quietly, wouldn't you be on guard? Qian Yixue didn't let go of this point. She refused to let him pass. Crack, crack, crack. Yi Qinghan cracked his neck, killing intent flashing in his eyes. He said coldly, "Since you don't care about the survival of the sacred land, why should I care? If you don't let me pass, I'll destroy the Qianyi sacred land today." Boom! Yi Qinghan drew his sword and sprinted away. His speed was even faster than before and there was no trace of him at all. All laws of order were automatically giving way. The local secondary universe of the Qianyi Holy Land would definitely be annihilated if a fight broke out between the sages and the saints in the secondary universe. Qian Yixue was shocked. She could clearly feel that Yi Qinghan's combat power was 40% stronger than the sage who attacked Feng Yu. "I can let you pass." Qian Yishue's expression immediately turned ugly. It was not that she did not dare to fight alone, but this was not a place for sages to fight. Yi Qinghan snorted. He flung the sword in his hand and said coldly, "You really deserve a beating. Did you anger your man to death?" Qian Yishue was so angry that she gritted her teeth and shook the bone whip in her hand. If this was not the Qianyi sacred ground, she would definitely fight Yi Qinghan to the death. "You can leave. I will definitely take revenge for what happened today," Qian Yishue replied coldly. Ichundat the bone whip shook, and the void collapsed. The sages will condensed into two large words. "Let him pass." Qian Yishue was unwilling to give up. She stared at Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan looked at Qian Yishue's angry expression and smiled faintly. "Oh, the sage is angry. Why don't you come with me to the secondary saint realm and we can compete?" The secondary saint realm was not suitable for fighting, but it did not mean that it was not suitable for sages to fight. Once there, it would all depend on one's understanding of secret techniques. One could only use 30% of one's strength. Although it was only 30%, it was the essence of a sage. It was absolutely magnificent. "Humph, I'll wait for you in the secondary saint realm." Whoosh! The void shattered. Qian Yishue left where she was and rushed toward the southern secondary universe. Yi Qinghan and Supremacy Yi joined forces. With the support of Little White Cloud, they caught up to her in an instant. They stepped over dozens of main cities with a wave of their hands and crossed a secondary universe in a few breaths. The sage's strength and speed were extraordinary. The two of them rushed all the way and returned to the Seeking Heaven domain after a few hours. They shuttled back and forth in the Seeking Heaven domain's original land of chaos. They chased after each other and their speed was exaggerated. They chased after lightning and shattered cracks. They did not even dodge the black holes. It was clear how angry Qian Yishue was. Yi Qinghan followed Qian Yishue at a moderate speed. He deliberately slowed down because he really wanted to teach this woman a lesson today. Even if he could not kill her, he could beat her up. Qian Yishue did not know that Yi Qinghan was deliberately letting her go at that moment. She thought that his and Supremacy Ye's combined speed was only SOSO. Yes, his and Supremacy Ye's combined speed could not be much faster. However, the support of Little White Cloud was not simple. He could only use half of his speed now. Once he used his full strength, he could kill Qian Yishue's speed in an instant. Boom! The universe collapsed. The two of them were like black holes. The laws of order in the original universe did not exist. Now, it was occupied by the sage's laws and principles, and there was law and principle of order. The original universe was too vast. Even a sage needed several months to reach the secondary saint realm. Huff, 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 Qian Yishue panted. The bone sword in her hand was even colder. She stared coldly at Yi Qinghan. "Today, I want to learn from the combination of Manor Lord Yi and the ruler's energy. If I lose, you can punish me. If you lose, give me the ruler's energy and I will spare your life. Do you dare to agree?" Qian Yishue said coldly. Her goal was still the ruler's energy. "I won't give up until I reach the Yellow River. If you win today, I will serve you as my master. I will give you the ruler's energy with both hands. If you lose, do you dare to swear on your sage merits to serve me as your master?" Yi Qinghan asked with a cold smile. This bet was huge. It was equivalent to gambling with one's life. Qian Yishue took a deep breath. Looking at Yi Qinghan's resolute gaze, her hands and feet trembled. She was clearly angered by Yi Qinghan. Qian Yishue hesitated for a moment. She didn't know Yi Qinghan well and didn't know what trump cards he had. If he lost, it would be the biggest joke in the world if a sage took a junior as his master. "I see that you're not bad looking, or I wouldn't be willing to make such a bet. The other sages are worthless in my eyes. They're not worth this price. If you don't agree, don't regret it." Yi Qinghan grinned provocatively. The sage merits in Qian Yishue's body were about to shatter the secondary saint realm's laws of order. "But I agree to your conditions. I will swear on my sage merits. If I lose, I will serve Yi Qinghan as my master. Otherwise, my merits will dissipate." The ruler's energy will leave my bloodline and I will become a progenitor again. If you lose and refuse to serve me as your master, I will do everything in my power to raise the insane immortal kingdom to the ground, Qian Yixue said without hesitation. Yi Qinghan smiled silently. His aura leaked out and completely merged with Sovereign Ye's. However, he was still in control. At this moment, Yi Qinghan discovered that Little White Cloud could actually suppress the laws of order here, allowing him to use about 60% of his strength while Little White Cloud could only use 30% of his strength. In this way, there was no comparison. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and Sovereign Yi separated from him. It's too unfair to fight you like this. I don't need to use my ruler's energy to fight you, Yi Qinghan said proudly. Chapter 30:21. Yi Qinghan let go of Sovereign Yi and even threw his sword to him, but the white bracelet on his wrist was very conspicuous. No one knew who built this secondary saint realm, but its power was very obvious. A sage could only use 30% of his power here, but the Little White Cloud could allow Yi Qinghan to use his peak power and could even support him. This was different. Qian Yixue's bone sword shook and turned into a bone whip. The sharp sword edge around the bone whip emitted the power of a sage. 30% of her power was enough to kill many ancestors. Even an expert like Feng Xian, who had grasped 50% of the sage's power, could only be defeated when facing 30% of a true sage's power. Yi Qinghan, today I'll let you see what a true sage is. With 30% of my power, it'll be good if you can withstand 3 moves. Boom! Buzzed the bone whip in Qian Yixue's hand moved, and the wind whistled. The space of the secondary saint realm did not move at all, and the sword light filled the surroundings. The stable void was cut open by the sword edge on the bone whip, but it instantly reassembled. Whoosh whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and directly left the place. His speed was unimaginably fast, and even the bone whip's speed could not catch up to his pace. Qian Yixue's figure moved, and the essence of the whip was revealed to the extreme. It danced around Yi Qinghan, but it brushed past him every time. Yi Qinghan was barehanded. He seized the power of the bone whip's afterimage and slapped Qian Yixue's waist. However, the bone whip's sword edge directly tore the clothes on his arm and almost injured his flesh. Fortunately, he retreated quickly enough. Yi Qinghan used a lot of power in this slap. He wanted to take the opportunity to hit Qian Yixue, but unfortunately, she intercepted it in time, causing Yi Qinghan's slap to feel like he was caressing her waist. Although Qian Yixue was very old, her cultivation was strong enough. At this moment, her appearance was like a young woman in her 30s. She had never touched a man since her husband died. She did not expect to be touched by Yi Qinghan today. You're courting death? Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The blade on the bone whip spun at high speed, constantly cutting off Yi Qinghan's escape and attack routes. Yi Qinghan didn't dare to touch the swords on the bone whips. He could only keep dodging. The swords kept slashing at his throat. If he wasn't so fast, he probably wouldn't have been able to dodge 3 attacks. Thud thud thud. Yi Qinghan shifted around, his hands forming claws that could almost tear the void apart. Ancestral might mixed with the power of the sage and sage, he was so powerful that not even a second-level saint could suppress his aura. Boom! Bang! The powerful force charged into the secondary saint realm, and the space began to fluctuate. It was a ghastly sight, and there were afterimages everywhere. Supreme Yi was lying on a stone slab with his legs crossed. He leaned against the stone with a sinister smile on his face. How boring! If I had made a move, this little girl would have lost long ago, Supreme Martial Artist Yi said arrogantly. Supreme Martial Artist Yi saw that Yi Qinghan was still able to move with ease, but he couldn't attack Qian Yixue's body because the whip technique had completely protected him. Yi Qinghan was also in a passive position. His speed was faster than Qian Yixue's, but he couldn't fight her head-on. Sword, Yi Qinghan's body retreated, and his large hand grabbed behind him. At this moment, Sovereign Yi waved his hand and pulled out the flaming sage sword that was stabbed into the stone slab, and directly threw it to Yi Qinghan. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Roared at Yi Qinghan's speed was extremely fast. The tip of his sword split into dozens of swords, causing sparks to fly from the bone whip. He was actually on par with Qian Yixue. Qian Yixue attacked for a long time, but she couldn't break through. A large part of her battle robe was torn by the sword, and her beauty gradually appeared. Qian Yixue was flustered and exasperated. She swung her whip around and directly locked Yi Qinghan's surroundings. The sword light was like a rainbow, instantly cutting through Yi Qinghan's battle robe. However, when the bone whip's blade cut through the white line formed by the little white clouds, it actually didn't cut through it. Yi Qinghan was immediately overjoyed. He found an opportunity to block the bone whip with his wrist and punch out. Bang! Boom! Yi Qinghan's fist landed on Qian Yixue's waist, but his left hand blocked the bone whip. The blade on the bone whip was actually blocked by the bracelet, and it couldn't pierce through at all. Qian Yixue's waist was almost broken. Her body twisted and flew to the right. The bone whip was dragged along as it moved quickly. The tail of the whip swung backward and pierced through Yi Qinghan's back. The blade cut through supreme martial artist Yi Qinghan's body, instantly turning it into a bloody mess. Yi Qinghan let out a muffled groan and staggered, almost falling over. Thud, thud, thud. Qian Yixue retreated a few hundred steps before she could regain her footing. Her face was pale, and the bone whip in her hand was stained with blood. It even had a trace of Yi Qinghan's flesh. However, her injuries weren't limited to that. Several of her ribs on the left side of her waist had been broken by Yi Qinghan's punch. She almost suffocated. Yi Qinghan sucked in a breath of cold air and touched his back. His flesh had become much weaker. Although this place couldn't unleash the power of a sage, the sage's laws of order still existed. Once injured, it would be difficult to recover. Yi Qinghan snorted coldly, gritting his teeth as he broke out in a cold sweat. Qian Yixue stared at the bracelet on Yi Qinghan's wrist. It was just a white cloud, and yet it could block the attack of a sage weapon. Although this place suppressed most of her power, she couldn't find such a substance in all the secondary universes and primal universes. If she could find it, she would have dominated the entire secondary universe. "What's that in your hand?" Qian Yixue asked in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan waved his wrist. He was also staring at the little white cloud on his left wrist. There wasn't even a mark on it. The little white cloud's defensive power was exaggerated. He had never seen such a material before. "I don't know what this thing is, but now that I know that its defensive power is so strong, your attack won't have much effect on me. At least in the secondary saint realm, it won't be a threat to me." Yi Qinghan moved his wrist, and the little white cloud transformed into a real cloud. It clung tightly to his chest and arms. This white cloud was as light as a feather, unlike heavy armor that couldn't fit. This little white cloud would only increase his combat power. "Qian Yixue, you don't have a chance. Admit defeat." Yi Qinghan stepped towards Qian Yixue and said coldly. Qian Yixue frowned as she looked at Yi Qinghan's smug face. She kept retreating, wanting to leave the secondary saint realm. As long as she left the secondary saint realm, she would be able to unleash her peak combat power. At that time, the little white cloud might not be able to defend against her attacks. What? Yi Qinghan's figure flashed, and he appeared behind Qian Yixue. Qian Yixue immediately turned to the left and retreated, but she couldn't escape from Yi Qinghan's control. What? Yi Qinghan flipped his hand, and the little white cloud left his hand and wrapped around the bone whip. The two swords on the bone whip couldn't attack anymore. Yi Qinghan took advantage of the momentum to rush towards Qian Yixue. He punched her wrist, and the bone whip left her hand. Qian Yixue's combat power dropped significantly once the bone whip left her hand. Chapter 30:22. Boom. The bone whip fell, but the divine light continued to flash. Yi Qinghan was holding onto the little white cloud by a thread, and it returned to Yi Qinghan's hand. "Do you still want to hold on? The bone whip is no threat to me, at least not here. Even if you fight to the death, the result will be the same." Yi Qinghan stepped not too far away from Qian Yixue and spoke calmly. Qian Yixue took a deep breath and looked at the bone whip in the distance. She knew that if she fought again, the result would be the same. This place was not suitable for her to fight, and she had no idea what the little white cloud was. This godly item's sudden appearance had disrupted her plans. Qian Yixue stared at the little white cloud wrapped around Yi Qinghan's right wrist and said unwillingly, "I admit defeat, but you must tell me where this thing came from." Yi Qinghan shrugged and replied calmly, "I found this thing in the primal universe's primordial chaos. At the time, it was entangled by a primordial black hole. I discovered it by accident and rescued it. I didn't expect it to have its own consciousness, but it cannot communicate with me, so I don't know what it is. Perhaps it is a second ball of ruler's energy, or perhaps it is something else." "You don't know?" Qian Yixue looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. She did not expect to lose to an unknown thing. Yi Qinghan nodded seriously and said calmly, "I thought the sage would know about it. It seems that I overestimated you and underestimated the primal universe." "Phew," Qian Yixue exhaled. She was a sage, and an old one at that, so she knew the difference between a sage and a legendary ruler. It was the difference between heaven and earth. It was incomparable and immeasurable. A ruler ruled over everything. Once he appeared, everything in the world would pale in comparison. He was the master of the primal universe, and all laws of order would have to listen to him. A ruler could create new laws of order, so a second ruler could not be born. There were too many unknown things between a ruler and a sage. There were many things that the sage did not know about. Now, a strange substance had appeared. Qian Yixue took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Admit defeat." Admitting defeat meant becoming a slave. A sage becoming a slave. This was the first time in all of history. Yi Qinghan smiled and raised the chin of the first female sage in all of history. He said calmly, "Qian Yixue, I did not intend to be enemies with you. I purely wanted to break through to the ruler realm and revive some people who should not die. However, you took the initiative to oppose me, so don't blame me for not being courteous. If you're willing to bet, then you must accept your loss. If you want to be a slave, then so be it." Yi Qinghan smiled faintly and said, "This is not the attitude of a slave." Qian Yixue, she was unwilling to say anything. Yi Qinghan looked at Qian Yixue's expression and thought for a moment. He put down his finger and said, "Sage Qian Yi, you are a sage and a senior. I know that I am not qualified to be your master, and I have never thought of becoming your master. I just want to be friends with you. At least, we are not enemies. If there is a day when other sages attack me, if you do not help me, at least do not attack me. So, let's pretend that today's bet never happened. How about it?" "You?" Qian Yixue looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. She did not expect him to give up a slave like her. She was a sage and a peerlessly beautiful woman. Wasn't this what all men wanted? "Yes, your strength is a great help, and you can help me at critical moments. Your beauty is also unparalleled in the world, and any man would be moved by it. The feeling of being conquered is unparalleled. However, you're a sage, and you shouldn't be humiliated, nor should you be a slave. If I were to do that, I'd really be cutting off my path to becoming a sage. I'm not as short-sighted as others. I'm just me, and my goal isn't just to become a sage, nor is it to be above a sage, but to dominate everything. As such, my state of mind is definitely not what you think it is," Yi Qinghan said plainly. Qian Yixue looked at Yi Qinghan's calm face and her Dao heart was in a mess. How many years had it been since she had interacted with someone of the same generation? She seemed to have forgotten that she had always lived in her own world and did not communicate with outsiders. However, when she heard Yi Qinghan's words, she realized that there really was a problem with her state of mind. "Allow me to say something sincerely. You are not qualified to be called sages. If you have time, take a look at the sages of the third planet. They are the real sages. During the battle of the sages in the primordial era, there were many sages in the secondary universe, right? According to my understanding of the third planet, there are not many sages. Counting the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, other than these 8 and 2 or 3 legendary figures, they only have 10 sages. How many secondary universes are there? There should be no less than 20 sages. Did you win? And you lost miserably. Because you know too little about the state of mind of the sages. Yi Qinghan said quietly. Everyone says that the merit of the sages is not just for your people, but for the entire common people and the primal universe. The sages of your secondary universe are too short-sighted, terrifyingly short-sighted. Yi Qinghan slowly retreated, turned around, pulled out his sword, and picked up the bone whip before throwing it to Qian Yixue. What you should be comprehending now is not the profound meaning of the mystic techniques or the so-called sages' laws, but human nature and common people. We are all humans. No matter how strong our cultivation is, we cannot break away from human nature. When you understand the importance of human nature and common people, you can tell me that you are sages. Yi Qinghan said faintly, take your bone whip and leave. I hope that the next time we meet, we will not be enemies, but fellow Taoists. Qian Yixue's eyes were filled with complex emotions. No one had ever said the words Yi Qinghan had said to her all these years, and no one had dared to speak to her like that. Thank you, Qian Yixue said solemnly. Yi Qinghan looked straight at Qian Yixue and said with a smile, you are welcome. You were born noble, but I am like an ant. I climbed hundreds of stairs, and every step I took was firm and solid. That is why I understand the thoughts of people at every level. If you don't find it troublesome, you can give up your arrogance and climb up from the lowest level of mortals. Make every step more solid, and you will discover that life really is different from what you think it is. Of course, you can also choose to be my enemy, but I have always only given people one chance. If you cherish it, you are my friend. If you don't, you are my enemy. I don't care if I have 1 or 2 more enemies. In the short term, the other sages won't dare to make a move. 10,000 years later, even if they join forces, they won't be able to do anything to me. Yi Qinghan turned and left, leaving behind a final sentence. 9 sages. If nothing unexpected happens, I will only take 3 lives. If the 6 of you don't cherish it, I don't think any of you 9 sages will survive. The position of ruler is mine. Even if I can't do it, it will be the people of Kuang Fu who can reach that step. Whoosh. Whoosh. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and gradually disappeared from Qian Yixue's sight. A good deed was a path. If Yi Qinghan forcefully enslaved Qian Yixue today, she might betray him at a critical moment out of hatred. Both sides would suffer, and in the end, they would both die. Rather than not being able to control her, it was better to let her go. She might be of great use in the future. Yi Qinghan's every step was meticulous. Chapter 30-23. Yi Qinghan left the secondary saint realm and entered the secular world, arriving at the peak of the Taoist mountain. Zhang Daoling seemed to be waiting for him. He had returned from the primal universe and had not left. Yi Qinghan bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, senior sage." Zhang Daoling's hair was white, and even his beard was white. At this moment, he had a warm expression on his face, just like his grandfather, kind and amiable. "Manor Lord Yi, you don't have to be so polite. Although you are not a sage, you have the combat power of a sage with your spirit pet. Sit down and wait for us to be peers," Zhang Daoling said with a smile. Yi Qinghan was stunned. He did not expect Zhang Daoling to know that his spirit pet, Supreme Yi, had become a supreme. Zhang Daoling looked at Yi Qinghan's surprised expression and immediately explained with a smile, "When you fought with Sage Fang Yu, I was behind you. When I saw that you were in control of the situation, I did not make a move. If I had, I would have angered the sages of the secondary universe. The gains would not have made up for the losses." Yi Qinghan immediately bowed again and said in a deep voice, "Thank you for your concern, venerable master." Zhang Daoling got up and helped Yi Qinghan up. They walked out of the hall and looked at the beautiful mountains and rivers. The white clouds were within reach. Although this place was small, it was even more majestic. Zhang Daoling stood on the peak outside the hall and looked at the vast mist as he whispered, "There is no need to stand on ceremony. You just have to remember that sages do not rely on strength, but on merit. That is enough. Don't do anything stupid like the sages of the secondary universe." "I will remember," Yi Qinghan said respectfully. Zhang Daoling turned to look into Yi Qinghan's eyes. He had seen a lot in his life and had seen countless people. At a glance, he could tell who was worth nurturing and who was not. However, people were fickle, just like Tao ancestors star-defying. I hope you have not forgotten your original intention. Zhang Daoling's voice was as loud as a bell, and he had the demeanor of a transcendent being. He then asked indifferently, "Since you've come back at this time, you must have something to tell me, right? If this old man can help you, I'll help you." Yi Qinghan immediately took out little white cloud and placed it in his palm. He asked, "Esteemed master, you are experienced and knowledgeable. Can you explain to me what this is?" Zhang Daoling looked at little white cloud. At first, he was calm, but then he became confused, and then he was shocked. He reached out his aged and decaying hand and stroked little white cloud. He didn't say anything for a long time. Indeed, Zhang Daoling was very knowledgeable, but he had never seen anything like the little white cloud. It wasn't sovereign energy, but on the third planet, it was able to exert a different kind of law and logos. This was unprecedented. Even if the formation here had been set up by Yuzun, he wouldn't have been able to exert much of the sage's power, but this little white cloud could. This is... Zhang Daoling mumbled to himself. He could not recognize the origin of this little white cloud. He then asked, "Headmaster Yi, where did you get this treasure? What are its specific uses?" Yi Qinghan answered truthfully, "This junior obtained it from the primal universe's most primordial land of chaos. At the time, it was entangled by the primordial black hole, and even the primordial black hole was blocked by it. However, it couldn't break free from the primordial black hole's shackles, and the black hole couldn't pull it in. It can increase my combat power by 1,000 times. Even if I fuse with the divine bird, it can increase my strength by about 30%. Its defensive power is incredible. I fought with Sage Jin Ishue in the secondary Saint realm, and she used about 30% of her power, but she couldn't break through little white cloud's defense at all." Zhang Daoling was silent for a long time. This kind of thing was beyond his comprehension. "Qian Ishue lost?" Zhang Daoling asked. Yi Qinghan nodded and replied, "Although I had a bet with her, I let her go. I didn't want to completely anger the 9 sages, so, yes, you know when to advance and when to retreat. You see the big picture. You are the wisest person this old man has ever met." Zhang Daoling sighed. Qian Yishue's nature isn't bad. This matter might have inspired her. It's not a bad thing. Letting her go is beneficial to both you and her. Yi Qinghan nodded. He had naturally considered this when he let Qian Yishue go. "Is there anything else?" Zhang Daoling asked. Yi Qinghan cupped his fists and bowed again. "This junior would like to ask the esteemed one to help this junior cultivate the upper echelons of Kuang Manor. If we can cultivate 1 or 2 sages, Kuang Manor won't be suppressed like this. Our sect can become a holy land. If 1 or 2 sages had sovereign energy, it would be easy to cultivate. However, if one wanted to become a sage without sovereign energy, apart from the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, no one had ever become a sage through virtue. Even Zhang Daoling himself had only become a sage after refining sovereign energy." Zhang Daoling took a deep breath and pondered for a long time before replying in a low voice, "Come with me to the Jade Court Sacred Realm first. I'm going to see Lord Yuzun and ask him about this white cloud. Also, I'm going to train a sage and see if Lord Yuzun has a better way to make someone a sage without the sovereign's energy source. The person next to you last time was tainted with the merit of an ancestor. He has the highest chance of becoming a sage and can do it without the sovereign's energy. It's just that this old man can't train him." Yi Qinghan had heard of Lord Yu's name for a long time. According to history, he was a great sage who controlled the flood. In reality, his merits were far more than just controlling the flood. Most of the legends were not true. Many of his essences were hidden away because he didn't want to disturb the hearts of the people. "I wonder if this junior can meet Lord Yu?" Yi Qinghan asked expectantly. As a person of the 3rd planet, it was the most glorious thing to be able to meet an ancestor. Yi Qinghan was no exception. Even if he became a sage, the respect in his heart would not change. Zhang Daoling hesitated. Lord Yu was in a very awkward situation now. His merits were constantly being depleted because of the formation. The only people who truly knew about his merits were the few sages of the Jade Court's sacred realm. His merits were being depleted quickly, but the amount he could absorb was little. He couldn't make ends meet. He hadn't seen anyone for many years. This old man doesn't dare to agree. Let me see Master Elder Jun. Come with me first. Zhang Daoling sighed. Yi Qinghan followed Zhang Daoling all the way down the mountain. Zhang Daoling was still able to use some of his power, but he was relying on a protective treasure given to him by Sage Yuzuan. It was an umbrella. It was unknown how long this oiled paper umbrella had lasted. Although it was old, it allowed him to use 10% of the sage's power. Whoosh! Zhang Daoling's figure flashed and took Yi Qinghan to the sky. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. 2 hours later, the two appeared in the secondary Saint Realm. At the end of the secondary Saint Realm was a node that led to the Jade Court's sacred realm. However, other than the sages of the third planet, there was no one else. There was actually another Jade Court's sacred realm behind the secondary Saint Realm. Chapter 3024. The Jade Court's sacred realm was as beautiful as a fairyland. Immortal chi lingered in the air, and the immortal pond was filled with lotus flowers. The Jade Court's sacred realm definitely didn't only have sages. There were also some talented people from the third planet who had the legendary immortal root, which was the foundation for cultivation. They were chosen by the sages for cultivation, and also to take care of the sages who were past their prime. Greetings, Heavenly Master. Greetings, Heavenly Master. A few young men and women passed by and bowed. Zhang Daoling didn't put on any airs, unlike the sages of other secondary holy lands. Everyone had to kneel when they saw him, and he only smiled. These children are the seedlings I selected from the third planet. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, many of the people with cultivation talent from the third planet have disappeared. Now, it's already good enough to find a few young people to take care of their daily lives. Zhang Daoling sighed. Yi Qinghan followed behind and watched. These young people's talents were indeed very ordinary, but this was because they were suppressed by the laws of order. If the 9 cauldrons were removed, perhaps it would be a different scene. Yi Qinghan knew a lot about the legends of the third planet, but he didn't know if those mythical people existed. Yi Qinghan asked like a curious child, "Venerable One, does the legendary Ho-I shooting down the sun really exist?" Zhang Daoling's face darkened, and he nodded and replied, "It does, but he didn't shoot down the sun, but a sage. However, he has already fallen." Yi Qinghan was shocked. He didn't expect such a legendary existence to have fallen. Tathagata? The Jade Emperor? Do they all exist? Yi Qinghan asked again. Zhang Daoling smiled and shook his head, saying lightly, "They don't exist. They are all fabricated. Most myths can't be trusted, but there are some that do exist." Oh, Yi Qinghan was slightly disappointed. Those mythical figures were heroes in many people's hearts, but unfortunately, they were all fabricated. After a while, they passed through a pond and arrived at a bamboo pavilion. Zhang Daoling said, "Abode Lord Yi, I'm going to see Master Lao Jun. Whether or not I can meet Venerable Yu depends on luck." Yuzun wasn't putting on airs, it was just that his current state made it impossible for him to meet people at any time. Yi Qinghan was looking forward to meeting virtuous Paragon Yuzun, but he didn't force the issue and nodded seriously. Tap tap tap, Zhang Daoling slowly left. Although this sacred realm was quite big, the buildings were all clustered together. The rest of the place was filled with immortal herbs and divine flowers. Yi Qinghan sat on a chair and looked around. Supreme martial artist Yi also poked his head out and looked around, drooling. "This place is so strange. I feel that you don't stand outside the 5 elements here." "It seems that you are still within the 5 elements," Supreme Yi said doubtfully. Yi Qinghan nodded. He had also sensed that something was amiss, but this was where all the sages of the original universe resided. Even if something was amiss, it was not surprising. Little white cloud continued to coil around his right arm without much reaction. At this time, Zhang Daoling arrived at a palace with an even older man inside. It was the elderly lord. He was fanning himself with a palm leaf fan and seemed to be on the verge of death. Dowling, why did you bring Yi Qinghan to the Jade Court's sacred realm? The elderly lord asked in a dignified manner. Zhang Dowling immediately bowed and answered, Master elderly lord, Yi Qinghan brought an unknown item that I have never seen before. It looks like a white cloud, but its defensive power is ridiculous. Even a sage's weapon can't cut through it. It can also increase a sage's battle prowess. It has consciousness but no soul, so we can't communicate. That's why I brought him here. Additionally, he wants me to train him in Insane Mansion and meet virtuous Paragon Yuzun. The elderly lord raised his brows. He had no objection to Yi Qinghan asking Zhang Dowling to train Insane Mansion. However, he had never heard of Little White Cloud before. As for meeting virtuous Paragon Yuzun, this was out of his control. Dowling, you know about virtuous Paragon Yuzun's situation. Did you agree? The elderly lord asked. Zhang Dowling immediately shook his head. I know about virtuous Paragon Yuzun's situation, so I didn't agree. I only told him to try his luck. That's White Cloud? I don't know what it is. As for meeting virtuous Paragon Yuzun, I'll go take a look first. If he can meet him, there is no harm in letting him meet a real virtuous paragon. The elderly lord slowly stood up with a serious expression. What was a real virtuous paragon? Of course, it was someone who didn't rely on the lord's power. Instead, they relied on merit to reach the position of a virtuous paragon. Even if a virtuous paragon's body died, their soul would accompany their merit and remain in this world forever. I think so as well. Abode Lord Ye's state of mind is still lacking and he doesn't understand the virtue of a virtuous paragon. Letting him meet virtuous Paragon Yuzun might be very beneficial for his future. Zhang Dowling lowered his voice. The elderly lord immediately left and disappeared from the main hall in the blink of an eye. At the back of the Jade Court's sacred realm was a picturesque scene with majestic scenery. However, there was a very ordinary bamboo courtyard with a lake outside. A bamboo bridge extended to the center of the lake. There were several boys and girls around the age of 16 outside of the house. They each had their own duties. The elderly lord wore a white robe and had the demeanor of an immortal. He walked to the edge of the bridge and two boys immediately came to greet him. Greetings, Master Elderly Lord. The two boys immediately bowed. The elderly lord nodded and asked, How is virtuous Paragon Yuzun's body? Master Elderly Lord, virtuous ancestor virtuous Paragon has been doing well recently and has often been pushed out by us. One of the boys respectfully replied. The elderly lord was ecstatic and quickly said, Go in and report that the elderly lord has an urgent matter to see virtuous Paragon Yuzun. The elderly lord was much older than virtuous Paragon Yuzun, but he respected this virtuous paragon. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's merit was comparable to the heaven and earth. Yes, the boy bowed and retreated. Not long after, the boy ran back to the bridge and respectfully said, Virtuous ancestor virtuous paragon invites you in. The elderly lord immediately straightened his posture and was full of respect for virtuous Paragon Yuzun. This had nothing to do with cultivation. It was only because of virtuous Paragon Yuzun's merit that even sages had to bow. Da-da-da. The elderly lord stepped into the bamboo house and passed through the hall to enter the courtyard. There were several pear trees in the courtyard that were blooming like snowflakes. An old man with white hair draped over his shoulders was sitting under the trees. He was a hero past his prime and time didn't spare anyone. If it wasn't for his merit protecting him, he would have already died. His majestic back was filled with the aura of a father. It was majestic and heavy like a mountain, giving people a sense of security. Even if the sky collapsed, he would still be able to withstand it. Yes, the feeling of a father. An incomparable aura. His merit transcended everything. Even so, some people didn't understand him, such as the sages of the secondary universe. This was virtuous Paragon Yuzun. He reached out and caressed the snow-white pear tree as if he was caressing a baby. The back of his old hand was full of wrinkles and cracks. Elderly Lord, long time no see. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's hoarse voice was powerful and full of benevolence and vicissitudes. The elderly lord's face was solemn. He sighed and replied, I don't dare to disturb virtuous Paragon Yuzun's rest. I've already done what I can in the mortal world. There's no need to trouble you. Whoosh, virtuous paragon Yuzun slightly turned his wheelchair. His appearance was indescribable. Chapter 3025. Virtuous paragon Yuzun's face was full of wrinkles and had lost his original appearance. The dignified paragon Yuzun was in existence above the sage realm, yet he had aged to this extent. Ordinary people wouldn't have thought of this. The elderly lord hadn't seen virtuous paragon Yuzun in a long time. Seeing Yuzun at this moment, he was stunned. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Yuzun has aged a lot." "It doesn't matter. I've already come this far. What's the harm in aging a bit?" Virtuous paragon Yuzun smiled. It seemed that even smiling was a bit difficult for him. The elderly lord sighed. The reason Yuzun was so old was because he had used his merits to set up the 9 cauldrons array. He had sealed many laws between the primary and secondary universes and cut off the cultivation path of the 3rd planet. He was using his life to buy time for the 3rd planet. "Yuzun, if you really can't do it, just remove the array. Instead of wasting your life here, why don't you do it?" "I don't believe those people will dare to mess around," the elderly lord suggested. Virtuous paragon Yuzun shook his head and smiled. "Forget it, I've already seen through it. Although the people of the 3rd planet can't cultivate, at least they can continue their inheritance. Once the array is removed, no one knows what will happen. It's just my life in exchange for the continuation of the entire universe. It's worth it." The elderly lord couldn't change Yuzun's insistence. He could only sigh. "Tell me, why are you looking for me today?" Virtuous paragon Yuzun changed the topic and asked the elderly lord. Only then did the elderly lord remember that Yi Qinghan was still waiting for him. He immediately said, "A junior sent out by the 3rd planet has grown up. Although he hasn't reached the sage rank, he obtained the origin of the ruler's energy and cultivated it into a human form. Although he doesn't have much combat power, when combined, he has already surpassed the power of an ordinary pinnacle sage of a secondary universe. His talent, aptitude, and temperament are all very good. He also obtained something similar to a white cloud in the origin of the primal universe. I've never seen it before, but it can be used to defend and enhance combat power. It's very unique." "What's his name?" Virtuous paragon Yuzun seemed very pleased and nodded. "His name is Yi Qinghan," the elderly lord immediately replied. Virtuous paragon Yuzun's fingertips trembled slightly. He thought for a moment and nodded. "Bring him here." At this moment, Yi Qinghan was waiting in silence. He was very anxious because he wanted to meet one of the 3 kings and 5 emperors. Virtuous paragon Yu was a historical character with an unconditional faith. He was an ancestor. At this time, Zhang Daoling walked over and saw Yi Qinghan pacing back and forth. He smiled and said, "Prefecture Lord Yi, this matter cannot be rushed." Virtuous paragon Yuzun's situation is too special. Even Master Lao Jun rarely sees him, and the same goes for other virtuous paragons. So even if you don't see him today, don't have any other ideas. Virtuous paragon Yuzun. Yi Qinghan could see that Zhang Daoling seemed to have some unspeakable troubles. Perhaps virtuous paragon Yuzun's situation was not optimistic, so he generally did not want to reveal it to outsiders to prevent other sages from finding out and taking advantage of the situation. "It's fine. Whether or not I can meet him won't affect my respect and understanding of him," Yi Qinghan replied with certainty. In other people's eyes, virtuous paragon Yuzun did not even meet him because he was putting on airs. However, in Yi Qinghan's eyes, since virtuous paragon Yuzun was respected by even sages, his character was very obvious. But soon, Lao Jun appeared outside the bamboo pavilion. Looking at Yi Qinghan's vigorous face and clear eyes, he nodded with satisfaction. "Let me introduce you. This is Master Lao Jun." Zhang Daoling gestured with his hand. Yi Qinghan naturally knew of Lao Jun. According to legend, he was a top alchemist, but he did not know whether it was true or not. "Senior Lang, I've long heard of your great name." Yi Qinghan bowed repeatedly. The curiosity in his heart could not help but surge. He then raised his head and smiled. Senior, I heard that you are an expert alchemist. Is that true? Your alchemy furnace refined the great sage equal to heaven, Sun Wukong. Is that true? Black lines appeared on Lao Juan's forehead. He snorted and said, You stinking brat, what nonsense are you talking about? In any case, you are at the limit of the ancestor realm and have touched the threshold of the sage realm. How can you be so foolish and listen to legends? Yi Qinghan rubbed the back of his head and smiled awkwardly. These myths and legends are often true. I admire your deeds very much. Then you must know how to refine pills, right? Are there any pills suitable for me? Lao Jun was already subdued by Yi Qinghan's wretched expression. At this moment, Supreme Yi ran out. That wretched expression was much stronger than Yi Qinghan's. So it's Senior Lao Jun. Do you have any pills suitable for me? If you do, give me 100 or 80 pills. Supreme Yi reached out and asked. Get lost. Lao Jun was so angry that he laughed. He smiled bitterly and gestured with his hand. Virtuous Yuzun wants to see you. Hurry over. Virtuous Yuzun? Is that the person who put me in the cauldron? Supreme Yi asked curiously. Zhang Daoling was afraid that Supreme Yi and Yi Qinghan's ignorance would anger Lao Jun again. He hurriedly said, Yes, yes. Hurry up and follow Master Lao Jun. When you see Virtuous Yuzun, you are not allowed to be so rude. Yi Qinghan smiled. Lao Jun was a legendary figure and had little to do with him. However, Yuzun was different. No matter how reckless he was, he would not dare to treat Virtuous Yuzun so impudently. Daoling, come with me too. It's good to see Virtuous Yuzun together and listen to him, Lao Jun said calmly. Zhang Daoling was immediately overjoyed. Usually, he did not have many opportunities to see Virtuous Yuzun. The group of 4 left the bamboo pavilion together and continuously shuttled across the bamboo bridge. The mist was vast and the spiritual energy was oppressive. About an hour later, the 4 of them arrived at the side of the lake. They walked on the waves and arrived at the bamboo bridge. When the 4 of them stepped outside the courtyard, the child had already pushed open the door and gestured for the 4 of them to enter. Yi Qinghan was excited and his heart was beating non-stop. Dong dong, dong. Whoosh, 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 Yi Qinghan breathed out and rubbed his chest with his big hand. He expectantly stepped into the room and went through the hall to the courtyard. Seeing Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's old face, he felt a wave of sadness. This feeling was similar to seeing his father's white hair. Even though his flame of life had been burned out, at this moment, even Supremacy Yi was no longer wretched. He stood behind Yi Qinghan with a serious expression while staring at Virtuous Paragon Yuzun. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan respectfully kneeled and kowtowed 3 times before respectfully saying, Yi Qinghan greets ancestor. Ha! Yuzun smiled with a benevolent expression without any majesty. He slightly reached out and the kneeling Yi Qinghan couldn't help but stand up. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun smiled and said, Good child. I have given away many children over the years. Unfortunately, most of them don't even recognize their ancestors. You still recognize them, this old man is already very happy. Yi Qinghan looked up at Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's hand and face. He now understood why the Lao Jun didn't bother Virtuous Paragon Yuzun. His life force didn't have much left, so the sadness in his heart became even stronger. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.